Okay, so obviously leading into Tisha B'Av, appropriate to talk about Tisha B'Av. There is a sefer which I found many years ago. It's called L'Shkeina Tidrasha, and it's written by a grandson of the Stipler Gaon. And he tells a story there which is quite remarkable, which I think I'll share with you, and you'll see very shortly what it's got to do with the shir, the title for tonight's shir, which was breaking the heart of Hashem and building the temple, or something like that. You're not soaked. They forgot about the message about the shir.
Yeah.
You noticed that, or you didn't notice that? Yeah. So this sefer here, I don't know actually which anicle of the Stipler this was. Maybe you know, saying it's your family. Was it? Cousin of yours or something? Is it from a cousin of yours?
I don't know.
I don't know. Okay.
Maybe I just heard the sefer.
I think it's a Stipler. Okay.
Yeah. One of them.
So he says the following story. I don't know if I've ever told you this story before, but it's very moving. Shemona Shanim Achri Histalko Shal Chazanish. So this happens 8 years after the passing of the Chazanish. And it was in Toshin Kov Beis. And the story, the title here is a Maisa Norim Mecha Chazanish, an incredible story about the Chazanish. And the story is told about something called Rabbi Yaakov Feldman. So, what happened was, I'll miss out, I mean, you can see the whole thing, it's in 2 pages, but I'll just give you the idea. But he tells the story in the first person, it's about himself. So he was born in Hungary, and it says, Kasher Hayisi ben Yudzayin Shona was 17 years of age. Yitzasi el Beis Hayri, la'avoid be'iria Hungaria Katanam. So he left his father's house, a little village, and he left to work, 17 years of age. It's time to go and earn a living. So some sort of little town in Hungary, and it was called, if I can pronounce this, that would be very good, Almash Bisti. Almash Bisti. Don't really care about the moment. Very, very quickly, I forgot the chinuch, the upbringing, my traditions, etc. Everything Jewish. I tried very hard to hide my Jewish identity. The fact was, and if you remember from history, Hungary was an ally of the Nazis, an ally of Nazi Germany during the Second World War. It was the Arrow Cross with the fascists who took control there. And I just saw recently online, they've got some sort of memorial there on the Danube, which runs through Budapest. Shoes. Is it real shoes or models of shoes? Like models of shoes, or maybe casts of shoes. Many of the Jews were taken there and just pushed into the Danube. Shot or just pushed in? Shot or pushed into the Danube. Okay.
What are the shoes for?
It's the shoe because I suppose they took the shoes off, before it would have been in it. Anyway, so but it was it's very upsetting, sort of like Europe who wants to forget. But as a picture, it's a very upsetting picture. Okay. You probably saw the very incredible thing that the picture is going around today of this woman who's 104.
Awesome.
It's so stunning, and her family at the Kaisami, just wow. I'm not sure. It's such an uplift. I'm not sure if it's they should have put it after Tisha B'Av. I'm not sure, but anyway. So he wants to hide the fact that he's a Jew, and what happened? Oh, right. Oh, look, there you go. Okay. As Haviru Isi Hanatsim, but anyway, to cut a long story short, the Nazis grabbed hold of him and got him in the last year, because the Nazis, Germany actually invaded Hungary in the last year of the war, which is insane. Why are they invading their ally? And the reason was because they weren't assiduous enough for sending the Jews to Auschwitz. So Hitler actually diverted soldiers and trucks from the Eastern Front while they were being smashed by the Russians. And to get Jews to send the Jews to Auschwitz. That's why if you generally find anybody who's an Auschwitz survivor, they're almost always a Hungarian, because they were the last in, so there's the most chance of surviving. Oh. Anyway, so that's the story there. So what happens is, I'll read this a little bit to you. So basically, to cut a long story short, he survives the war. The rest of his family were killed in Auschwitz, and he gets to Eretz Yisrael before the founding of the state, and then the state was founded. He says, of course, you understand, by the time there, by the time I got to Eretz Yisrael, after what happened in Auschwitz, then that was it, he was finished with the Yiddish guy altogether. Avad Iraq as a Shabbos, not only did I work in Shabbos, the Gam, the Rosh Hashanah, but Yom Kippur. I used to work in Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur as well. Blan Yom Kippur, Tovshi New Gimel, Avad Dikhergli. So it was the night of Yom Kippur, and he was working as usual. Boisalala, Nirot Lai, Avi, Rab Chaim Mordechai Zechasalit Bachol. So that night, after he finishes working, his father comes to him in a dream. Lovish Kittel, Levon Metzoches, Atov Betalis Metzoches. He's wearing his kittel is a shining white kittel, and he's wearing his talis with tzitzis. Kabiyas Bechan, which he would be doing exactly had it been a normal Yom Kippur, and he would have still been alive. Omar Alai, Chaz b'tshuva. They said to me, do tshuva, son. Choizel l'derech shachnachti oischa. Come out to the way they brought you up. They've already made paskin in heaven that you should die young. The Yochai chorus, you die young. The king chazar achonim ashonam b'yed lail b'meshach shvu shalom, and for a whole week, this dream kept coming back and back and back and back again. I think we said we were going to do dreams as a whole shiur once, maybe, but at the moment. Behini agil al Shabbos. So the next week comes to Shabbos. B'shos me'acheres b'leila nachos the base kofa b'rishon atzir. So when there's a coffee, he has one of those Starbucks, whatever it wasn't called, the equivalent in those days. So he went home. Says that the whole week of his dad coming back and saying the exact same thing to him, which he's ignoring. And then what happens is he comes home, fine. The gash of the fellow is a radio, stretched out to radio, switch on the radio. But I said, Rega Shamati called Korah, and I heard a voice calling out to him from behind, Oi, boy! Ata Shuv Chaita, you're still breaking Shabbos. And he turned around and he says, and the translator doesn't Yiddish. Gavalti, okay, we don't know the Yiddish. I turned around and he roy ani kamoy b'chayis as abish and as I saw my father standing there as clearly as you can see me. He's still wearing his talis, still wearing his kittel. He said to me, don't think this is a daydream. Just don't think you're hallucinating. I'll come to tell you to do tshuva. The Shemaim Kavar Nechras Alecha Gadad Din Shakoras of Mechel. They've already passed in your Chav Koras and Shemaim. You're going to die young. What about Meher? He disappeared. Okay. So he writes the following thing. This is a smile on my face whenever I read this. But Isha Shabbos Kamuvin. That Shabbos, after that, you can understand that Lo Asisi cigarette, a shanti cigarette. I didn't smoke any cigarettes. Didn't do any. Lo Avanti radio. I didn't switch on the radio. Olam B'Motzei Shabbos Halachti B'Kol Noe. When I came to Motzei Shabbos, went to the picture house to see a film. Well, John Wayne or something like that. But boy, Basam, when I came home after that, Kasher Esvat, the Pasuk is now, just as soon as I opened the door, Miyad Ra'isi Shuv as the Musa Shal Avi Kamay B'Kainz, I see him again, clearly wearing his talis. And Schana Mevakish Lefano She'atav Ma'isa V'Omer Lal She'asad Rezer Abad Da'achrein. He said, do exactly what I told you to this. Last time I can come back to see him. Anyway, the story goes on, an astonishing story. He decided to go and see the Chazon Ish. So he'd heard of the Chazon Ish. He's got no shaykhs no connection to Judaism at all, or Jewish people, but the Chazon Ish was like this famous rabbi. And it's not too far away, and it's an astonishing thing. I mean, you think about this, that you can literally turn up at the door. I mean, if you wanted to go and see Donald Trump or Barack Obama, notice the diplomacy there, or you want to go and see the Queen of England, how would you get in to see her? You just can't, it's impossible. But if you want to go and see really one of the God Lador, and I'm talking Dor, Kola, and Kula, you want to go and see one of the most outstanding human beings in the world, effectively just knock on the front door, and you probably you might have to wait a bit because you're not the only one there, but you will get in. Astonishing idea. So he comes to the Chazon Ish, and it's really getting to him. He says he goes to work and he makes sure that all his employees who works in the garage are doing what they're supposed to do. He comes to the home of the Chazon Ish and he's shown in. This is the last year of the Chazon Ish's life. And the Chazon Ish is sitting at the table. He's an old man, and he's got a sefer open in front of him, and he's asleep like this. And so he does what everybody does when you're trying to get somebody's attention. The Chazon Ish opens his eyes, looks up, and goes, "Oy vavoi, you work in Shabbos? You work in Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur? Don't you know that your parents, the Shamas, have no menucha and Shemayim? And he says he stands there with his jaw agape. After all, he hadn't said anything yet to the Chazon Ish. He come to ask him what all these dreams mean and tell him the story. And the Chazon Ish says to him, "Wait, wait." And then the Chazon Ish to nod off again, and he looked up and he said, "In the Sklusa Mitzvah you did when you were young, your father's been allowed to come back to you. Do you know what it was?" So he said even when he was pretending to be a Yid, he would still sometimes, drop a penny in a pushka if he passed a shul or something. There was one outside. Chazon Ish shook his head, and then he remembered when he was just bar mitzvah, there was a knock at his father's door one night. A young woman standing there crying her eyes out. Her baby had passed away. The father was in charge of the Chevra Kadisha. There was two little villages near to each other, separated by a little forest. The father said to him, "Go to the house of this lady, the address, and collect the body of the little baby." He said that meant going through this forest, which was infested with bandits. I mean, he was literally. Have you ever been so scared you can actually hear? You can feel it. You can hear your heart pounding. That's how scared he was. But he went through and he got the body of the baby and he came back. And the Chazon Ish said yes, and discussed that. He says that he never, of course, he did what his father told him at that stage. He's never regretted. He's never looked back. And this story was told to the Stiplegon, and he said that as a Piladic story about my brother-in-law, the Chazon Ish. He said, mind you, it was well known that the Neshamas used to commonly come back to the Chazon Ish to ask him to intervene in the lives of their children who are doing things that are wrong and going off the derech. Now, the reason I tell you that story is because it's crucial to bear in mind that a father's connection to a son, a father's love for a child, is not in any way diminished. Where's my Vayikra?
Pretty well.
Sorry?
That's pretty well.
That's pretty well, yeah. Is not diminished in any way.
It's one of the things I've heard today.
Well, good. Is not in any way diminished as a consequence of the fact that somebody passes away. They're still part of our lives. Listen to this. This is instead of Shlach L'chon Yud Dalet. It's an interesting Kli Yoker. And here, what we're talking about here in the Sedras is the gifts of the Nasiim. Each of the princes of the tribes brought a gift, and of course, we remember that every single one of the gifts was identical to each other. And why? In order that nobody should try and outdo, give more, and cause kina and cause jealousy. That Sheva Yehuda gave more than the Soch or whatever, and there'll be a whole gans of competition. And then if you're doing it that way, then that might be quite a question of gaiva and blah blah blah. Fine. And here the Kli Yoker says the following thing. Find a place to be even better. Kli Yoker. Yeah. Well, I had it before. There are my notes. I put that in the right place, I'm sure. Zion your base. Zion. Oh! Sorry, that's right. Here, Zion your base. He quotes the Medrash Rabbah. Godel HaShalom. Shalom is so great. Even the dead need Shalom. Very strange statement. I mean, how could there not be Shalom in Shemayim? What's there to fight about? In front of the Ravana Shalom. I mean, what does that mean? He says, no. It's not talking that the dead upstairs, and you go upstairs and you find your mother-in-law there, and you get the idea.
That's where we started.
That's right. Shanem, says in Bereshis v'ata tova el avosech v'shalom, because the apostle says you'll go in peace to your father, to your fathers. Ain't a parish. Sheyesh eza katota mariva ben hamesim shestricha el shalom. It's not that there has to be police, policemen up there, malachim with blue uniforms and stuff, going and sirens going and stopping fights. No. El hamesim tzrichim sheyeh shalom ben hachayim. But the mesim require that there's shalom here in Olam Hazeh between people who are alive. Kim in shalom ben hachayim behem machrifim zeh zeh ad meheru yoretz tavor v'lachar v'etzachayim as a mesim ad shafilo l'shchani ofer. Then that will generate such pain upstairs that even the people who are sleeping or resting in the earth. In menucha bekever morid l'shanim al shalachayim b'kamatze shal. That's very upsetting. This kamaisha shel hahi shal hayas kavura machtes shal kinim It's this whole idea about like the pain that you see from the worms eating you up. Which is so common in our times, he writes. It means that they need shalom. What do they need shalom? They need shalom in their children. But if there is fighting, and it's so tragic and so horrible to see this, that I think I told you about a very good friend who was involved at the biggest shul in Manchester, and he says he sees it at least once a week. He'll at the bedside of somebody, some old fellow, who's in a coma, and he's only got an hour or 2 hours to go, and his family are gathered there, and somebody will take him aside, it'll be an old woman or an old man, to say, I'm crying, I so regret that I haven't spoken to my brother for 20 years, and now it's too late. And he said, you know what's really tragic? What's really tragic is they can't remember what they fell out about anymore. And interestingly, he says usually it's Yerusha. If they start digging, it's Yerusha. It says who got the Zadis, the Bobbas candlesticks? So one child got the candlesticks, and the other, the sister, she wanted the candlesticks. Fartik, ended. But that means that the love that you have for your mother, you're so upset because you want your mother's candlestick, because you love your mother, you're causing your mother or your father to be literally in pain in the kever, in Shemayim, because there's fighting here. It's the same idea that we said before. The relationship that you have with your children and with your parents doesn't stop simply because one or other has gone to Shemayim before and leaving the other one behind. So there's a couple of crucial principles I think we should remember at this stage. The first one is what it says in Devorim. In Devorim, in Yud Daled Pasuk Aleph, everybody knows, Bonim atem l'Hashem Elokechem. The relationship that we have with Hashem is Baruch. That's to say, the real relationship we have with Hashem is Father is He's a father and a son. Right? That's what it says in the Torah. That's how He says it. And again, He calls Himself Avinu Malkeinu. And remember, I told you in one of our earlier shirim that it was an interesting discovery to me when I tried to copy the behavior of the Manchester Rosh Yeshiva. I would think, because it's the tradition of Yeshiva's Mir, a letter from the old Mir to the Talmidim here in America, to remember how to daven, that the Iker is the first bracha of the Shemona Esrei, and every single word of the Shemona Esrei, you should look upon it as though it's the word in its own right. So the Manchester Rosh Yeshiva had the great schus of being close to, whenever he used to make even a bracha, even an Asher Yotze, he would take out a cedar, he would open the cedar, and he would say Baruch, and then translate that, incidentally full of tears. I was once with him. He said I was about to ask him something, and he said, "Yudiana, just to be to the base of Kisa, just have to make a bracha." He opened the cedar, Baruch, tears literally, starts to cry, translates it into Yiddish, without the mention, Ato, and so on and so forth. I think it took him 6 minutes or 5 minutes to say the bracha. I felt quite insufficient as a Jew having seen that. I was once with him incidentally in a place called Bournemouth. Well, just writing about Bournemouth, my brother-in-law used to be the Rav there. And Shemona Esrei, every Shemona Esrei, he would go through a box of Kleenex like that. Every Shemona Esrei. Crying and crying and crying his eyes out. The Baditsheva used to, they say the Baditsheva, Reb Levi Yitzchak, he added 2 words to the Seder. Tata, tata. Seems of, I lived a long time ago, but I don't think anybody's alive who saw him davening, but I saw the Manchester City davening. There are some people who talk, it's a tata, it's a relationship with the Father. Avinu Malkeinu. Okay, I'm Malkeinu, but I'm Avinu first. And I tried to copy that, but just do that. And I remember the first time after I saw that letter from the Mir, I thought, because that's the Manchester City was doing. You've got to consider each word in its own right. And it took, 3 steps back, 3 steps forward. I said, Baruch. And when I said Baruch, that was fine. And then the next word, it was like walking into a brick wall. Ato. Ato? Talking to the Baruch. Ato? You? I was making a joke before about seeing the Queen of England, but I think I may have told you before when she came to Manchester once, she asked to meet me because she used to listen to my radio broadcasts. So I was actually struck when we moved to America. So she never actually got to meet me. However, that's sad for her. However, if I'd ever got to see Her Majesty the Queen, one thing is guaranteed: I wouldn't say, "Hi, Liz." Right, you see the queen, you see a king, you don't speak to them in the first person, it's your majesty, etc. But this is the Melech Malchi Lochem. You say, yeah, because you're the son. You don't say to your dad, does father think, dad, can I borrow the car? Or dad, can I do this? The relationship of the father to his son. So that's the first thing to bear in mind. As simple Yisod as possible. Bonim etem Hashem Elokeichem. Another Yisod to bear in mind is what it says, what we say on Friday night, and the Chodadi, echoed all over the Talmud, etc. Before Hashem put pen to paper in the story of this world, and the story of Klal Yisrael, and the story of this Bria, then he knew how it was going to finish. He knew how it was going to end. What stopped Hashem destroying the world, or destroying Klal Yisrael, and therefore consequently the world, after the Ma'aseh of the Egel? So you say, of course, it was the intervention of Moshe Rabbeinu, who argued very strongly that Hashem should deny his Midas Adin and his Kas and Zebas. But part of the argument, we don't have to go to the Gemara, which talks about this, you all know the Gemara in Brochus, but just the Pasuk, his clincher argument, it seems to be Lama Yama Mitzrayim Lemoa Baroha Etziam Laharga Sam Behorim Alakolas on the Alpani Adama. Shu Mechan Apech Meinochem Alara Alamecha. Don't let the Goyim turn around and say, aha, the reason he killed them is because he couldn't take them into Eretz Yisrael. They'll make fun of you. It will be Chil Hashem. You will be damaged if you finish Klal Yisrael. Because they'll turn around and say because of the Ego Azov. They'll turn around and say because, he's like any other god, like the Avodah Zarah, Rahman al-Islam, that they worshipped. And just that he was exhausted, all his power was done through the Exodus, and there's nothing left. He couldn't get them in, so he finished them there. That would be a Chil Hashem. By the Ma'aseh of the that's why wrong page. By the Ma'aseh of Klal Yisrael when it comes to the spies. And again, once more, there's the promise or the threat by Hashem to finish it all off. Then Hashem tells me, "Bilti yuchelos Hashem lehevi es ha'am hazeh elo oretz asher nishba lahem v'yishchotem b'midbar." It's because Hashem Yisborah couldn't take them in. That's the argument they'll say. That's why it says in the end of Pirkei Avos that everything Hashem did in the world, everything Hashem made in the world was for His kavod. Was for His kavod. There's a beautiful sefer of Yitzchak Isaac Sher, the Rosh Hashiva of the vodka.
Could be that's also what we say in the Malkeina, still a man from another man.
Oh, absolutely. And ultimately, but that sounds like Gaiva, which doesn't make any sense. Everything he did was for his kavod. No, it doesn't mean that. The more Hashem looks good, the greater kavod Hashem has. I mean, I'll give you a very crude example. Suppose you wanted to, as I'm swearing my.
Asher Yolada type of thing.
Sorry?
It's like an Asher Yolada type. You see children behaving very nicely, it's a cover for the parent.
Yeah, but that would suggest that the parent needs kavod, or he's going to get nachas from the kavod. Hashem doesn't get nachas; he doesn't need it. He's perfect. The idea is a little more like this: that suppose tomorrow morning I will be swearing I'm becoming a citizen of the United States of America, 8:30 in the morning.
Wow.
Yeah. Sorry, my oath.
Oh, really?
Oh yes. Yeah, my fellow American. So now let's take I take this very seriously. So if I'm becoming an American tomorrow, so I've got So first of all, I've got to put a baseball team. I mean, you're not American, it's a baseball team. Okay. Or you want to support a football team, American football team. But I can now stop saying American football because the rest of the world have got it totally wrong. And they play soccer. Okay, so basically, which would be a good? Oh, over to you because you're American. That's okay. Oh, okay. So over to you. This huge gathering of Americans here. What would you say? What would be the best baseball team to?
You asked me what I could care less.
Okay. So I'm guessing
whoever won last.
Oh, that's very clever. Yeah, so you want to go with the winning team, right? There's the Cincinnati thingamajiggies, or there's the New York Yankees. The New York Yankees or the Boston Red Sox. I'm not completely ignorant. They're pretty good, right? So you want to support a team you go and occasionally say, yeah, we won. But, really, if you want to take this seriously, you want to make sure you get the team that really is. I mean, back in the UK, Manchester United for about, 20 years when the manager, Sir Alex Ferguson, who who lived in the same street as me in Scotland, went to the same school as me, they would just won every year. So that would be a clever thing to support, because they keep winning. It sounds a bit silly, but really, if the Rebbeinu Shem is always winning, everybody wants to join his team. It's not for him, but for you. If he looks good, then people will want to be avodim of Hashem Yisborach. Rabbi Isaac Sher in Reish Pei says a very interesting thing, and this is the second volume of Lekut Sichos Musar. And he's talking here about where it says in Tehillim Ayin Tes, in Kapitel Aleph, right at the beginning, it says Mizmor Osaf, Elokim bo goyim benachmasecha. So here the psalm is recording the fact of the destruction of the temple, and the non-Jewish armies come in and defile the temple, blah blah, and all that famous horrible story that we're going to sadly sit on the floor on Motzei Shabbos and recall. And the question really is, why is it called a Mizmor? Mizmor is a song. When it says Mizmor is a celebration, it's a song. So why is that Mizmor? Oh, so he says, "Odam can just buy him bedova nimsa she'afal bisha chorban goram chilul shmo Yisborach begoyim." Even though that ultimately and obviously there was a huge chilul Hashem amongst the non-Jewish nations, that Hashem's temple, the holiest place in the world, the place where heaven and earth kiss, was turned into a joke and despoiled, and we'll go into the details. It's too upsetting what they did there in order to, as it were, very much like a Moloch who cut off the circumcisions that castrated the Jews and threw it at heaven. That was their, insult to God. They did as much to insult God when they destroyed the temple. But that's how the Goyim saw, but that's not how we saw it. Why? Because the Rebbeinu Shem took out his temper and his anger ultimately on his temple. And if you look, or if we think for a second in Devorim, there is an astonishing and puzzling, well, it starts off as a puzzling thing, in the Seder of Re'eh. Here it's talking about when we come into Eretz Yisrael. This is, sorry, it's Yud Beis and Aleph. When you come to the land which I promised to give to you, don't forget this stuff. Wherever you're living there. Abed, Abdun, Skol, Hamakaimas, Asher, Avdu, Sham, Hagoyim. Sharatem Yoshim, Isam. Then destroy all the places of worship, and all the idolatrous centers of the non-Jewish nations are being displaced because of their idolatry. The mountains that they worshipped, and the valleys, and all these places where they made their temples, etc. Trees that they worshipped. Smash their mizbechos. And the Matzevah is going to crash into bits of ground down as well. And the trees that they worship, and burn them. And their idols, and then uproot them, so that there's no residue of the fact that this place was the place of the Avodah Zarah. The name is, everything is gone. Next pasuk. Don't do that to Hashem. Don't do that to Hashem. That's weird. Why would you have a Hamamina? Why would the Torah have a Hamamina, the Klal Yisrael, having been told to completely destroy all the places of Avodah Zarah, the Klal Yisrael would think to do the same thing to Hashem? And Rashi says the following thing. Ela shelo sasu k'masehem. Don't copy their behavior. V'yigormu avonasechem, so that your averas will cause lemikdash achvasechem shichor, that the base of mikdash of your fathers will be destroyed. The Rebbeinu Hashem says, if you go and do the sort of things that they do and cause me to be angry with you, my anger will burn fiercely and I will destroy my base of mikdash. Destroy my own, but not you. I can't finish Klal Yisrael. Why did he create the world? He created the world for his kavod. But his kavod was secondary. That's what it says. The whole world was for his kavod. There's something that's more important to Hashem Yisborach than his kavod. Our kavod. So I'd rather destroy my Beis HaMikdash and destroy Rachmon the son Klal Yisrael. Bonim atem Hashem Elokeinu. And the relationship between a father and a son is eternal, is ongoing, even after death. A normal flesh and blood father or mother stays connected to his son or her son. Kal v'chomer Avinu Malkeinu. You can destroy my Beis HaMikdash. You can make my face, as the Gemara says, when we do Averis, it's hard to say this, but it's a Gemara. Tanyan quotes this as well. It's like taking the head of the king, the head of Ramon Shem Rahman of this land, and sticking it in a toilet bowl full of tsoya, full of excrement. I'd rather have that, Hashem says, than destroy Klal Yisrael. Because it's a father. Because it's a father. Yeah. As a story, I don't know if I ever told you this, to tell the story about the father I bumped into in London. This goes back, I think, 20 years ago. I was giving a share in London in a show called Kinloss Garden Show, which I think is the largest show in London. It's huge anyway. I was speaking there actually just about 6 months ago. Very fine. The rabbi's an old friend of mine. But I was giving a share and there was about 1,000 people there in the audience. I think I was speaking for Project Seed. And after I finished the share, there was, normally what happens is they thank you, and then sometimes you get types of questions. And then after that, there's normally people who come up to want to speak to you privately. And that's what happens. A whole group of people who were gathered around me. And I noticed, when I used to say the stories, there was an old guy standing, hanging back, but on reflection, somebody my age. So, you know, middle-aged. Quite young, really. Anyway, so he was standing, and I waited for everybody to go, and then he came up to me and he said, Rabbi Rubinstein, he said, you live in Manchester? And I said, yes. He said, whereabouts in Manchester do you live? And I said, Broughton Park. He said, is that near Prestwich? That's like us in Inwood, is that near Lawrence? Of course, this is the adjoining, or Far Rockaway is the adjoining neighbourhood. And I said, yes, it's very near. And he said, do you know when he mentioned somebody by name? And I said, yes, I know him. And he said, how's he getting on? And I said, yeah, he seems to be doing fine. And he said, how many kids does he have? And I said, I think it's 3. 2 boys and a girl. And he said, what does he do for a living? And I said, I think it's insurance. Then he asked me another question, and I didn't know the answer to that, and I asked him the obvious question. I said, how come you know him? So he went all very quiet, and he looked down at his shoes, and after a few seconds he said, he's my son. So I said to him, forgive me asking, but how come you don't know how many grandchildren you have? So he told me a story of a classic teenage rebellion, and the mother and father tried everything to get their son back on the tracks. And then one night, the father, being a normal human being, and like all of us fathers sometimes make mistakes, get it wrong, and he lost his temper. He said, get out! Get out and don't set foot over my door again. 16 years later, how many children does he have? So I said to him, look, I can't promise and can't tell you that I know your son very well, but I think I know him well enough so you'd like to see his daddy again. And he said, oh no, too much water has flowed underneath the bridge. So I said to him, well, how about if you give me your phone number, you give me your address, and how about if I give you regular reports how your family are doing, and you like that idea? So I got into the car and I drove back to Manchester, which in those days was a 3.5-hour drive. And the next day, by coincidence, I bumped into his son. Because you can always arrange a coincidence. And I said to him, how are you doing? And he said, fine. I said, I was actually just down in London. I met somebody who knows he was asking after you. He said, who? I said, your father. He said, how's he getting on? I said, he seems to be getting on okay, but I think he'd get on a lot better if he could see his son again. And he said, oh no, too much water has flowed underneath the bridge. I said, look, by coincidence, I'm going down to London again tomorrow. How about if I take you down to see your father? And he hesitated. I said, good, I'm going to pick you up at 10 o'clock tomorrow. And I'm going to take you down, and I'll take you in to see your dad. And he started to say something, and I started to walk towards my car. I said, I'm terribly sorry, I'm in a rush. I'm going to see a share. Pick you up tomorrow at 10 o'clock. And he was talking to me about his driveway. Went home, picked up the phone, phoned the father.
You got like an hour and a phone call.
So, phoned the father, and I said, oh, it's Mr. Cohen. Yes, it's Rabbi Rubinstein. Will you be at home tomorrow at 2 o'clock? yeah, I think he anticipated I was going to phone with a report. I said, good, I'm bringing your son to see you. And he started to say something. I said, I'm terribly sorry, I've got to see you, Shir. And hung up the phone. So I picked up the son the next day at 10 o'clock, and we drove down to London. And even though it's a 3.5 hour drive, it was mamish like Kvitsa Sederach. It was just literally, boom, we just seemed to get in the car, we were there. Parked the car, walked up the driveway to the house. Literally, the guy was shaking in his boots. And we got to the front door. He was too nervous. I had to ring the doorbell. Rang the doorbell. No answer. The ring again, there was still no answer. I thought, oh my goodness. All this way, and the father's chickened out. I was going to ring it a third time, but suddenly behind the glass there was like a frosted image, and the father was there, and he opened the door, and there was the father. Looking at the son he hadn't seen for 16 years, or 17 years, and the son looking at his daddy. The son had tears streaming down his cheeks. The father had tears streaming down his cheeks. As you can see, I had tears streaming down my cheeks. The boy took one step towards his daddy, and his daddy came out and folded him in a big hug. And they walked together into the house, and I was wonderfully and gloriously redundant. I told them I'd come back in, I think it was 2 or 3 hours, whatever I said. I went to see my own family in the Golders Green area of London, and I came back, and I drove them back to Manchester. Within 6 months, that boy, that young man, had sold his business and sold his house in Manchester to buy a new house just around the corner from his daddy, so that his children could see the Zadie as they grew up. The relationship never ends between a father and a son. And I remember once in Manchester, I was speaking at, there was a big fundraising dinner for, I think it was Hale House. So there was 2 guest speakers, myself and somebody called Viscount Tony Pandy. Viscount Tony Pandy, his real name was George Thomas, had been the Speaker of the House of Commons in England. He was a Labour peer. And they sat me because we were both speakers. And again, it was about an audience of 800 or something. Big evening. Sitting at the table, I was sitting literally beside him. And do you ever just meet somebody and just like fall in love with somebody straight away? This old fellow was in his late 70s, early 80s. He lived in London, obviously. He was dying of cancer. And yet when his beloved Jewish, he wasn't Jewish, he was actually a Methodist minister from Wales originally, from a Welsh mining town called Tony Pandy. So when he became a lord, you get to choose your title. So he took the title from the town that he came from. And I just fell in love with this old guy. We got on like a house on fire, and he spoke first. And he told the story of the first Jew he ever met. When he was a little boy of about 6 or 7, we're going back to about, I think, 1914, 1915. There was one Jew living in the town, a Mr. Isaacs. And one day this Mr. Isaacs got hold of this little boy, who was called Geordie Thomas, and offered him a deal, or made him a proposition that if he would come into the house on a Friday night to light his coal fire, and Shabbos morning to light the coal fire again, a classic Shabbos guy, the non-Jewish friend who helps you out on Shabbos, then he would earn for this 2p. 2 pennies. We have a 2-penny piece in England. And so 2p. Now, 1915, for a 7-year-old boy, 2p is a fortune. And so there was a farthing as well. Incidentally, a penny was 1 penny, but that was split into quarters. So you could get a farthing, so therefore you had 8 farthings, and you could buy things with a farthing. Anyway, so basically, he came home to show his mummy his first ever wage. He came into the kitchen, and she was a strict religious Methodist lady, and she was at the sink washing the dishes. And a little boy standing there, 7 years of age, holding up his treasure, his 2p, to show his mother. So she saw him at the corner of her eye, and she slowly dried her hands with a towel. And in her Welsh accent, she turned around and said, "Where did you get that, boy?" He said, "The Jew, Mr. Isaacs, he gave it to me, mum, after going to his house on a Friday night, a Saturday morning to light his coal fire. If I do that every week, I get a 2p. She said, "Take it back, boy!" And Viscount Tony Pandy, when he was telling this story, he recalled that he had a big lump in his throat, a little boy, and tears welling up in his eyes. He said, "But I can have it. Take it back, boy." "But it's mine." "Take it back." "Why? You don't take money from a man to help him serve his God." And so little Geordie Thomas went back to the Jew called Mr. Isaacs to return the 2p, and Mr. Isaacs, the religious Jew, would hear of this, and he marched him back to the mother, and there started an argument between the religious Christian and the religious Jew over the fate of this 2p. And they reached a compromise, that Geordie Thomas, one day to become Viscount Tony Poundley, would light the Jews' fire for tuppence that first Shabbos, but after that he would do it for free. And then he turned around to this audience and said, "You Jews, you've forgotten who you are. When we in this country were living in caves, you'd already built your golden temple in Jerusalem. When we in this country were wearing bearskins, you'd already written the book that would be the moral and ethical inspiration of mankind. Never be ashamed of being Jewish. You've forgotten who you are." We had a base of Mikdash. And don't forget who we are. We have an Avinu, Malkeinu, we have a Tata in Shemayim, Boni, Machem, Lashem, Lekechem. And we can rebuild this base of Mikdash. Ein Hamokim Bo B'Trei, and the rest of the Gemara says, you're not sent into the world to perform a task which is impossible for you to do. And we say we could do this. I wrote a book about this 2 years ago. And we talked about this in our shir, which is not in the book. That, the Lashon Hara, the Chofetz Chaim stells on so much. So there are ways, you can actually get it out. Tell Hashem. Tell Hashem about it. It's okay. There are ways to beat this. This could be, if we really think that we've got a relationship with the Father in Shemayim, which is what was, if you remember in that shir, necessary in order to be really telling him your stories. We really could make this the very last base of Mikdash if we focus on the fact that we've got a Father who sometimes breaks his heart and takes insult after insult after insult, but not allow his son to suffer. Boni Machem Lashem Lekechem. I'd rather my base of Mikdash destroyed than have you destroyed. With that sort of thing in mind, it's not too hard to imagine that we could rebuild it again.